Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. I'm Darren McBreen. It is Tuesday, July 19th, 2016. Here's a quick look what's coming up.
Tonight, with over 140,000 signatures in tow, the White House scoffs at the petition labeling Black Lives Matter a terrorist organization. And cowardly commies attack Alex Jones from behind. That's next.
It looks like the communists started to attack Alex, and he defended himself.
Crazy times.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me?
Barack Hussein Obama has rejected a petition to designate Black Lives Matter as a terrorist organization. It didn't take long for the White House to respond to a petition that managed to get over 140,000 signatures in less than 2 weeks, asking the Obama administration to declare Black Lives Matter as a terrorist group. No doubt the longer Obama sat on this petition, the more signatures it would have gotten. And I think if it wasn't rejected so quickly, we might have been eventually looking at 1 million or so signatures. But it was rejected. The petition's lifespan was cut short, much like the lifespans of police officers in Dallas and more recently in Baton Rouge. Cut short. In all fairness, there's also been plenty of people out there whose lives have been cut short by the police. People like Philando Castillo and Kelly Thomas and countless others. Now, I want to read what it says in this petition, and then we'll give you Barack Obama's response. Plus, we'll take a look at what Hillary Clinton says about all this, and we'll compare all that to honest, reasonable, and rational thinking, because this is two ideologies that we're talking about here, and they're both very, very different from one another. First, let's take a look at what is in this petition. It is time for the Pentagon to be consistent in its actions, and just as they rightfully declared ISIS as a terror group, they must declare Black Lives Matter a terrorist group on the grounds of principle, integrity, morality, and safety. Terrorism is defined as the use of violence and intimidation in pursuit of political gains. Now, you got that right, and this definition is the same definition used to declare ISIS and other groups as terrorists. Signed, we the people. Well, makes a lot of sense to me, but once you know it, Obama doesn't see it that way. In fact, he predictably disagrees, and once again, he gives the impression that he's actually siding with Black Lives Matter on this issue. Obama responded to the petition first by flat out rejecting it. He said the White House plays no role in designating domestic terror organizations. Yeah, unless they just happen to be constitutionalist or sovereign citizens, right? He went on to say he knows that there are some people who have criticized even the phrase Black Lives Matter. Imagine that. As if the notion is that other lives don't matter, and that is simply not the case.
When incidents like this occur, there's a big chunk of our fellow citizenry that feels as if, because of the color of their skin, they are not being treated the same. And that hurts.
Oi, oi, bang, bang! 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 Oi, oi, bang, bang!
If they go about their burden of whatever they said you're doing, you pull your piss out, you bust at them. You pull your piss out, you bust at them. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be you against them. And we need action. Come on. Take action. I don't give a whether you knock them over, whether you run up on them, whatever you do. You better take
call for white people like myself to put ourselves in the shoes of those African American families who fear every time their children go somewhere, who have to have the talk about, how to really protect themselves when they're the ones who should be expecting protection from encounters with the police.
The effort for women to get the right to vote was contentious and messy. There were times when activists might have engaged in rhetoric that was overheated and occasionally counterproductive. But the point was to raise issues so that we as a society could grapple with them. The same was true with the civil rights movement and the union movement and the environmental movement and the anti-war movement during Vietnam. And I think what you're seeing now is part of that long-standing tradition.
In case you couldn't understand what they were saying at the end of that video, that was a Black Lives Matter march in New York City where they were chanting, "What do we want? Dead police. When do we want? Now." Barack Obama says that Black Lives Matter is a rational response and a justified response to racial profiling by police. Meanwhile, it is blatantly obvious, and there's plenty of evidence that suggests that the leadership among Black Lives Matter is calling for racially motivated violence and the murder and assassinations of police. That, my friends, that is terrorism. And they are promoting total war while lone wolves do their dirty work.
Do you condemn the anti-police rhetoric coming from this hateful ideology?
As a journalist sitting here on television, I don't have to condemn anyone, anything. That is something that you should ask other people around the country.
I condemn
their
them
jobs to condemn
just
that.
like I condemn the hateful ideology out of groups like the KKK.
The suspect said he was upset about Black Lives Matter. He said he was upset about the recent police shootings. The suspect said he was upset at white people. The suspect stated he wanted to kill white people, especially white officers.
I condemn it. There is no place in American discourse for that sort of vile, vitriolic hate coming out of this ideology.
You know, I never understood why a lot of people think that the only real black leadership in our country right now are people like, Jesse Jackson, the Reverend Al Sharpton, and of course, Barack Hussein Obama. Those people, in my opinion, are not real leaders at all. They've never shown any real leadership. My good friend Larry Pinckney says that he doesn't call them leaders at all. He says they're misleaders, and I happen to agree with him. But I'm here to tell you that there is plenty of good, strong black leaders in our country right now, and no better example than these two guys, Sheriff David Clarke and Chief David Brown. In fact, if that was the party ticket this election, they'd certainly have my vote. And I think rather than calling it a Democrat or Republican party ticket, we could simply call it the Take No party ticket of 2016. President David Clarke and Vice President David Brown. Let's make America badass again. And we are joined now by John Rappaport, NoMoreFakeNews.com. And John, let me get your take on this. What do you think about Barack Obama's response to the police shootings? I mean, he's quietly condemned them, but he's yet to respond, or I guess he's yet to condemn or disavow, I should say, Black Lives Matter. What do you think is up with that?
Well, he's doing a squeeze play. I mean, it's a classic both ends against the middle. On the one hand, he's encouraging Black Lives Matter and the protesters and so forth, meetings. He, Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, of course, Soros money and so forth. And so this is egging these people on. Do it more. More signs, more crazy stuff, more not solving the problem, et cetera. But on the other side, and this is a big one that I covered recently in an article. He's continued to militarize police forces all over America. We're talking about major, heavy armed forces equipment that is making a national police force. And of course, he and others of that globalist ilk want to federalize all police. So this is a classic squeeze play to create chaos.
Well, I think you said it perfectly. That's it. This is establishing order out of chaos, and then the federal government comes in as the savior. And I think the intent this entire time is to nationalize the police force. So when these people are out there protesting against the police, they don't realize that they're actually going to get more in the process.
Absolutely. This is a game. Okay, we get these people to do all the protesting and the violence, and we throw in a few snipers and shooters, and cops start dying, and other people caught in the crossfire also are dying, and this goes on. And then on the other hand, we gen up the police forces, and I'm talking about even little community police forces with armored vehicles and heavy weapons and so forth, because that's going to be the final solution.
And they couldn't do this without the help of the mainstream media. And how do you think Obama, how do you think he cheerleads this whole situation? What is he doing to encourage protest and maybe even encouraging the shootings and the deaths of police officers?
Well, he's responding to it without the authority of a president. He's talking about the culture, the social this and that and so forth. These are all signals of surrender, basically.
He's making victims. He's making victims out of everyone.
Yeah, the manufacture of victims goes on and on and on. And that process, I mean, there are genuine victims, but this process of manufacturing them is endless.
Yeah.
There is no end to getting what you want if you are visioning yourself as a victim. It's a way of life. It goes on forever. And at some point, the violence is going to rise to a level where this militarized police is going to clamp down very hard. And now that's the final solution to this. And he's arming those police. I mean, come on, you just look at it and you see. If he were saying, look, we have to, dial back the police, and he was really serious about it, okay, he's wrong. But if on the other hand, he's bringing in heavy artillery and weapons and vehicles and, making this look and be like an army. Well,
I was just going to say, and let's face it, the police, they are militarized. They look more like a standing army than traditional police of the past. But also, we do know that there is police brutality. There is racial discrimination at times. I don't think it's nearly as bad as the media portrays it. But for example, Philando Castillo, the young man that got murdered recently that was captured on video, the aftermath was captured on cell phone video. That guy was pulled over 31 times in his neighborhood, and he never had he wasn't a felon or anything like that. So it does look like racial profiling. But I think that obviously rioting in the streets is not the answer. Certainly shooting cops is not the answer. So I think that Black Lives Matter is not the answer, and they are just adding fuel to the fire. Am I right?
Yeah. Look, this is being portrayed, all the protests and the violence against cops. This is being portrayed as this is the problem, the main problem of inner cities. That's ridiculous. Poverty, crime by gangs, drugs, total dependence on the government for survival. These are the major problems that have been plaguing inner cities forever. And this is all being covered over. There is no attempt to solve the problems of inner cities. Not really. There never has been since the war on poverty started in 1966. This is all a cover. This is all pretending that if somehow the police brutality was lowered a few levels, that inner cities would be fine. This is a total lie. There are millions of people in inner cities right now that are sitting there in their homes who have been hostages basically all their lives. They're watching these protests on television, and they know that nothing good is going to come of this because there are no real solutions here for what's really ailing inner cities and has been for a long time. Take